My name is Amber Thompson, and I'm 27 years old. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who would steal her sister's fiancé, but life has a funny way of surprising you. This morning, I married Nathan Miller at the courthouse downtown. 3 hours later, I walked into my apartment to find my sister Stephanie wearing my wedding dress, the one I designed myself, but never got to wear. The look on her face told me she knew what I had done. I should feel guilty, but after years of living in her shadow, something inside me had finally broken. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're viewing from, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe to hear how this wedding day disaster came to be. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for this one. Growing up in Portland with our parents Diana and Carl Thompson, Stephanie and I were initially inseparable. Just 2 years apart, we shared everything. Toys, clothes, secrets whispered under blanket forts during thunderstorms. My earliest memories are tinged with the golden glow of sisterhood, holding hands as we crossed the street to elementary school, teaching her to ride a bike in our driveway, staying up late to help her with spelling homework. But as we grew older, the subtle shift in our parents' behavior became impossible to ignore. When Stephanie started dance lessons at 7, my mother went to every recital, camcorder in hand, capturing each twirl and leap. Meanwhile, my father would be stuck at work during my soccer tournaments. When I brought home straight A's, there'd be a quick, good job, and a pat on the shoulder. When Stephanie did the same, there was ice cream and a new outfit. "Your sister is more delicate than you," my mother would say. "You're so independent, Amber. You don't need the same attention." By 13, Stephanie had entered her first beauty pageant. My parents spent hundreds on dresses, coaching, and professional photos. I sat in the audience watching my sister parade across the stage in a sparkly blue dress while my mother clutched my father's arm, tears of pride glistening in her eyes. That night, after Stephanie won first runner-up, I overheard my mother on the phone with my aunt. "Stephanie's got that special something," she said. "Amber's pretty too, of course, but more in an everyday way." The words cut deep, carving a hollow space inside me that I filled with determination. If I couldn't be the favorite, I'd be the successful one. I threw myself into academics, sports, and extracurriculars. I worked part-time jobs from 16 onward, saving every penny. I created independence because it was clear I would never receive the support freely given to my sister. The competition between us grew as we entered high school. When I made varsity volleyball as a sophomore, Stephanie suddenly developed an interest in the sport. When I started dating Ryan Cooper, the student body president, Stephanie would find reasons to stop by our table at lunch, hair perfectly styled, laughing at his jokes. Then came prom night, senior year. I'd saved for months to buy a crimson dress that made me feel beautiful for once. The night before, I hung it carefully on my closet door. The next morning, I woke to find Stephanie standing in my doorway, an empty coffee mug in her hand, brown liquid dripping down the front of my dress. "Oh my God, Amber, I'm so sorry. I was bringing you coffee and tripped." My parents told me it was clearly an accident. They gave me money to buy another dress, but every store was sold out of anything decent in my size. I stayed home that night, scrolling through social media posts of my friends having the time of their lives. Stephanie, a sophomore, had somehow scored an invitation with a senior boy. She wore a blue dress that looked remarkably similar to one I'd pointed out in a magazine months earlier. College became my escape. I chose Seattle University, 4 hours from Portland, far enough that visits home could be limited to major holidays. I double majored in marketing and business, graduated with honors, and landed a job at a growing tech company. I built a life where Stephanie couldn't overshadow me. Meanwhile, Stephanie attended Portland State, living at home, her tuition and expenses covered by our parents. She changed majors 3 times before settling on communications. After graduation, she got a job at a local PR firm, largely through our father's golf buddy connection. My visits home followed a predictable pattern. Initial warmth and catching up would inevitably devolve into subtle comparisons. My mother would mention how Stephanie's apartment was so cozy, while mine was a bit sterile, don't you think? My father would ask about my job, but his eyes would glaze over when I discussed marketing strategies, yet he'd listen intently when Stephanie talked about handling social media for local businesses. Every Christmas, birthday, and Thanksgiving became an exercise in emotional endurance. I'd arrive with gifts and good intentions, only to leave early with a knot in my stomach and tears I refused to shed until I was safely on the highway heading back to Seattle. The pattern was clear. Whatever I valued, Stephanie would find a way to take or diminish. And my parents would not only allow it, but often encourage it with their tacit approval. I told myself I was beyond it all, that I had built a life that was immune to Stephanie's influence. I was wrong. 2 years ago, I returned home for Christmas, bracing myself for the usual familial tension. My parents had invited neighbors and friends for their annual holiday gathering, the house decorated with my mother's meticulous attention to detail. I was nursing a glass of wine in the kitchen, taking a moment away from polite small talk, when he walked in. "Sorry, just looking for the bottle opener," he said with an apologetic smile. "I'm Nathan, by the way. Nathan Miller. Friend of the Daniels next door." There was something immediately disarming about Nathan, tall with dark hair that curled slightly at the collar of his blue button-down, warm brown eyes behind stylish glasses, and a smile that created a dimple in his left cheek. He had an easy confidence that wasn't cocky, a rarity among the men I'd dated in Seattle. "Amber Thompson," I replied, reaching for the drawer where my mother kept the opener. "Daughter of the house, home for the holidays." "Ah, so you're Amber." Mrs. Daniels mentioned Diana and Carl's older daughter lived in Seattle. Something about marketing for tech companies. What followed was the most engaging conversation I'd had in months. Nathan was an architect who had recently moved to Portland from Chicago to join a firm specializing in sustainable design. He loved hiking, had traveled through Europe after college, and had a passion for historical buildings that bordered on obsession. He listened attentively as I talked about my work, asking thoughtful questions about campaigns I'd managed. "You should check out the renovated library downtown while you're here," he suggested. "The original Art Deco details they've preserved are incredible." Before I knew it, an hour had passed. We exchanged numbers under the pretense of me wanting a tour of architectural highlights during my stay. 2 days later, we met for coffee, which turned into lunch, which extended into a walk through the Winter Farmers Market. For the first time in years, I extended my stay in Portland by 3 days. After I returned to Seattle, Nathan and I texted daily. Late-night phone calls became our routine, discussing everything from childhood memories to dream travel destinations. In February, he visited Seattle for a weekend. I showed him my favorite spots. The view from Cary Park, the hidden bookstore downtown with a cafe tucked in back, the waterfront at sunset. Saturday night, over dinner at a small Italian restaurant, he reached across the table and took my hand. "I haven't felt this way about someone in a long time," he said quietly. "I know long distance is complicated, but I think we have something worth exploring here." Over the next few months, we created a rhythm. Alternating visits between Portland and Seattle, FaceTime dates when travel wasn't possible, sending small gifts and inside jokes through text. In April, Nathan mentioned he'd been offered a chance to work on a project in Seattle, potentially allowing for a temporary relocation. By summer, I was happier than I'd been in years. Nathan understood my drive and ambition because he shared it. He never made me feel like my success was intimidating. Most importantly, he was mine. Something in my life that had nothing to do with Stephanie or my parents' approval. In August, Nathan planned a weekend trip to Mount Rainier. The night before, he seemed nervous, checking his backpack multiple times, insisting on packing a special lunch himself. In hindsight, all the signs of an impending proposal were there. Then my phone rang at 5 a.m. on Saturday. A major client was threatening to pull their account over a miscommunication. As director of their campaign, I had no choice but to head to the office for emergency damage control. Nathan was understanding but clearly disappointed. "Take my key," I told him as I rushed out. "I borrowed some hiking gear from my parents last month that I've been meaning to return. Could you drop it off if you're heading back to Portland? They know you, it won't be weird." That Sunday night, exhausted but successful in saving the client relationship, I called Nathan. He sounded distant, distracted. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just tired. I dropped off the gear at your parents' place. Your sister was there." "Hope that wasn't awkward," I said, thinking nothing of it. "No, she was nice. We had coffee while your dad found the right place for the equipment in the garage." Over the next few weeks, Nathan's calls became less frequent. He canceled his next trip to Seattle, citing a project deadline. When we did talk, our conversations felt forced. I attributed it to the natural ebb and flow of a relationship, to work stress, to the challenges of distance. Then came the call that shattered everything. "Amber, we need to talk." Nathan's voice was serious, strained. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I'm not sure we're heading in the same direction. Your career is in Seattle. Mine is establishing itself in Portland. The distance is harder than I expected." "We can figure it out," I insisted, panic rising. "You mentioned the Seattle project. That fell through," he interrupted. "And honestly, I think it's for the best. I care about you, but I think we need to recognize this isn't working." Just like that, it was over. I spent the night crying, replaying every moment, searching for signs I'd missed. In the morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years and stayed in bed, hollow and confused. What I didn't know then, what I wouldn't discover for another devastating 6 months, was that during that casual coffee with my sister, something had shifted. Something that would eventually destroy us all. The Instagram notification appeared on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in my office, preparing for a client presentation, when my phone lit up. Stephanie Thompson has added to her story. I almost ignored it. Since the breakup with Nathan, I'd thrown myself into work with renewed intensity, earning a promotion and taking on higher-profile accounts. I dated casually, but nothing serious had developed. My communication with family had dwindled to obligatory holiday calls and occasional text updates. Something made me tap the notification. Perhaps some sixth sense, some primal instinct warning of danger. My sister's beaming face filled the screen, her left hand prominently displayed, a diamond ring catching the light. The caption read, "I said yes to forever with my soulmate. Hashtag engaged, hashtag future Mrs. Miller." The phone slipped from my fingers, clattering onto my desk. Nathan. My Nathan. And my sister. The room seemed to tilt as the implications crashed over me in waves. Every canceled call. Every vague excuse. My sister's sudden reluctance to discuss her dating life during our rare conversations. It all converged into a sickening realization. I barely made it to the bathroom before the nausea overwhelmed me. Kneeling on the cold tile floor, gasping for breath between heaves, I felt as though I was drowning on dry land. A colleague found me there, helped me clean up, and called a rideshare to take me home despite my weak protests about the presentation. In the safety of my apartment, I called Stephanie. My hands shook so badly, I had to try 3 times to complete the call. "Amber, I was just about to call you." Her voice was high, excited. "Did you see my post? Can you believe it? How long?" I managed to ask, my voice barely recognizable. A pause. "How long what? How long have you been seeing Nathan?" Another pause, longer this time. "Oh. Well, we reconnected right after you two broke up. It just happened." "Reconnected?" The word felt like acid. "You only met him once, when he dropped off hiking gear." Actually, Stephanie's voice took on the defensive tone I recognized from childhood disputes. "We exchanged numbers that day. Just as friends. He was going through a tough time figuring out the relationship with you, and I was being supportive." "Supportive?" I repeated, numb disbelief giving way to white-hot anger. "You were being supportive by dating my boyfriend behind my back?" "Ex-boyfriend," she corrected quickly. And it wasn't behind your back. It just evolved naturally after you two ended things. He chose me, Amber. Maybe if you weren't always working. I hung up. My parents called within the hour. Instead of concern for me, they were brimming with excitement. Stephanie and Nathan are perfect together, my mother gushed. He's already like part of the family, spending Sundays with us, helping your father with the deck renovation. You knew, I whispered. You knew all this time and didn't tell me. Well, honey, my father's voice now, placating, we thought it would be easier coming from Stephanie when the time was right. And you were always too busy for him anyway. Remember when you canceled that hiking trip? Stephanie would never put work before. I hung up on them too. Later that night, a text from Nathan. Amber, I'm sorry you found out this way. What happened between us was real, but things with Stephanie just evolved naturally. I hope someday you'll be happy for us. I threw my phone across the room. The next morning, I called in sick again. Then the next day and the next. After a week, my boss suggested I take some personal leave. You've banked enough overtime for a month off, she said gently. Whatever's going on, take time to sort it out. I spent the first week in a fog of betrayal and self-recrimination. Should I have seen this coming? Was this my fault for prioritizing my career? The second week, rage took over. I blocked them all on social media, deleted text threads, removed photos. The third week brought the dangerous spiral of comparing myself to Stephanie. Had Nathan found her more attractive, more attentive, less demanding? Finally, I sought therapy, something I'd resisted for years. Dr. Claire Bennett listened as I unraveled the history of my relationship with my sister, the patterns of favoritism, the competition, and now this ultimate betrayal. Your feelings are entirely valid, she assured me. What your sister and Nathan did was a betrayal of trust, regardless of timing. But I'm concerned about how this fits into a larger pattern in your family dynamics. Over several sessions, we explored my childhood, my tendency to seek validation through achievement, and my difficulty trusting others. I was beginning to feel marginally more functional when the embossed invitation arrived in my mail. Diana and Carl Thompson request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter Stephanie Marie to Nathan James Miller. They had set the date for June 15th, almost exactly a year after Nathan and I had broken up. My birthday was June 14th. Coincidence or final twist of the knife? With Stephanie, one could never be sure. Are you going to attend? Dr. Bennett asked during our next session. Absolutely not. I replied automatically. Would not attending give them power over you? Would it allow them to control your actions and emotions from afar? Her questions lingered with me for days. Finally, I RSVP'd yes. Not out of forgiveness or acceptance, but from a desperate need for closure. To look them in the eyes and show them they hadn't destroyed me. The engagement party was held at my parents' home, the backyard transformed with fairy lights and flowers. I arrived late, wearing a red dress that hugged every curve, hair and makeup professionally done. The conversation stuttered as I moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations meant for my sister with a practiced smile. So good of you to come, my mother said, her eyes darting nervously between me and the clusters of guests. Stephanie wasn't sure you would. I wouldn't miss it, I replied, voice honey-sweet with insincerity. Nathan found me by the drinks table, his face a complex mix of guilt and wariness. Amber, thank you for coming. It means a lot to Stephanie. Does it? I asked, maintaining eye contact until he looked away first. Small victories. Throughout the evening, I played my role perfectly. The supportive sister, the gracious ex. But as I was leaving, I overheard Nathan on the patio with his college friend Tyler. You seem happy, man, Tyler said. Though, I gotta say, I was surprised when you ended things with Amber. You two seemed solid. Nathan's sigh was audible even from my position near the side gate. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice. Stephanie's amazing, but occasionally I catch myself thinking about what might have been. Amber has this intensity, this passion for life. He trailed off, but the seed was planted. As I drove home that night, his words echoed in my mind. Nathan still thought about me, still wondered. And with that small crack in the facade, a dangerous idea began to form. 1 month before the wedding, I was working remotely from a coffee shop in Portland during a brief visit to handle some family paperwork. I'd chosen this particular cafe precisely because it was nowhere near my parents' neighborhood or any of Stephanie's usual haunts. So when Nathan walked in, I initially thought I was hallucinating. Amber? His surprise seemed genuine as he approached my table. I didn't know you were in town. Just for 2 days, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Estate planning paperwork for grandmother's cabin. An awkward silence stretched between us. May I? He finally asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. Against my better judgment, I nodded. For the first 15 minutes, we exchanged bland pleasantries about work and weather. Then, as he was about to leave, Nathan's composure cracked. I miss talking to you, he blurted out. Stephanie's great, but it's different. With you, I could discuss anything. I remained silent, allowing the moment to expand uncomfortably. I've been having doubts, he continued, voice lowered. Don't get me wrong, I care about Stephanie, but sometimes I wonder if everything happened too fast. What do you mean? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. After I dropped off your gear that day, Stephanie texted me. Just friendly at first, asking how I was doing. But then she suggested meeting for coffee to talk about Amber. She said she was worried about you working too hard. My grip tightened on my mug. Classic Stephanie, presenting herself as the concerned sister while undermining me. One coffee became lunch, became dinner, Nathan continued. She was always available, always suggesting things we could do. When I mentioned missing an architecture exhibit in Seattle, she immediately offered to go with me. When I talked about feeling stuck creatively, she suggested weekend trips for inspiration. She pursued you, I stated flatly. Nathan looked uncomfortable. I don't want to make excuses. I was an active participant. But looking back, I can see how orchestrated it all was. By the time I realized how serious things had become, we were already moving in together, and your parents were treating me like a son. And now you're having second thoughts? 1 month before the wedding. The anger I'd suppressed for months edged into my voice. I don't know what to do, he admitted. There are moments when I'm with her that I catch myself thinking of you. But there's so much momentum now. The venue deposits, her dress, your parents' expectations. And Stephanie would never let you forget that you broke her heart, I added knowingly. He winced. She can be intense when upset. I thought of the countless childhood tantrums that had resulted in me giving up toys, clothes, even friendships to restore household peace. I should go, Nathan said finally. I'm sorry for dumping this on you. It's not fair. As he stood to leave, I made a split-second decision. I'm having dinner at Luciana's tomorrow night, I said, naming a small Italian restaurant on the outskirts of town. 7 o'clock. If you want to continue this conversation. He hesitated, then nodded once before walking away. I told myself I was merely seeking closure. That dinner would provide a proper ending to our story. But deep down, I recognized the dangerous thrill of reclaiming something Stephanie had taken. Nathan showed up at 7:05, apologizing for traffic. Over pasta and wine, the years of our separation seemed to dissolve. We talked about his latest project, my recent promotion. He still remembered how I took my coffee, still laughed at my terrible architecture puns. As the evening progressed, our conversation deepened. I never stopped thinking about you, he confessed, reaching for my hand across the table. When Stephanie walks into a room, I find myself looking past her, half expecting to see you. Then why propose to her? I challenged. He looked away. It happened so fast. She started dropping hints about marriage just a few months in. Your parents were enthusiastic, showing me family rings, talking about wedding venues. Before I knew it, I was at a jeweler's, and it all felt inevitable. 2 dinners became 4, became clandestine meetings whenever I visited Portland. Each time, I told myself it would be the last. Each time, I failed to end it. Then came the call from Stephanie that pushed everything toward its catastrophic conclusion. Amber, I need you to be my maid of honor. I nearly dropped the phone.
What?
Why would you? I mean, don't you have friends who would? It has to be you, she interrupted. You're my sister. Mom and Dad agree it's the perfect way to heal our family. Nathan thinks it's a wonderful idea, too. Did he? I wondered, recalling our most recent dinner where his hand had lingered on mine, where he'd whispered that he was trying to find a way out of the wedding without hurting everyone involved. I don't think that's a good idea, Steph. Please? For me? For the family? Her voice took on that wheedling tone that had convinced our parents to give her the car on prom night, my college fund for her semester abroad. Against all logic and self-preservation, I agreed. Perhaps some masochistic part of me wanted to witness the train wreck up close. Or maybe I was already formulating the dangerous plan that would eventually lead us all to ruin. The following weekend found me trailing behind Stephanie at Portland's most exclusive bridal boutique, holding clips and pins as she tried on dress after dress. What do you think of this one? She asked, twirling in a lace-covered mermaid gown. It's beautiful, I replied automatically. Not quite right though. Show me that Pinterest board you've had forever. The one with all the wedding dresses you've been collecting since college. My stomach dropped. How do you know about that? She laughed. Please, you showed it to me years ago. I want to see what my stylish big sister would choose. Reluctantly, I pulled up the private board I'd maintained for nearly a decade, a collection of dream dresses for a wedding I'd begun to think would never happen. Stephanie scrolled quickly, then stopped at an elegant A-line gown with delicate beading and a dramatic open back. This one. This is stunning. It was my favorite, saved years ago when I'd first begun to imagine a future with someone who loved me completely. Let's find something similar, I suggested. No need. Stephanie smiled triumphantly. They have this exact dress here. I saw it earlier. 2 hours later, she'd purchased my dream dress, the saleswoman gushing about how perfect it looked on her, how it might need just minor alterations to fit her slightly smaller frame. That night, Nathan called. Did you know she asked me to be maid of honor? I asked without preamble.
What? No.
God, Amber, I'm so sorry. Things are spiraling out of control. She bought my dream dress today. The exact one from my Pinterest board. His silence spoke volumes. I can't do this anymore, Nathan. Being around you both, pretending everything is fine while she systematically takes everything that matters to me. It's destroying me. I'm going to end it, he said suddenly. After the rehearsal dinner. I'll tell her I can't go through with it. She'll make it your fault somehow. You know that, right? She'll make herself the victim. I don't care anymore. I want to be with you. The right way, this time. The night before the rehearsal dinner, Nathan came to my hotel room. The original plan had been a quick strategy session, how to handle the inevitable fallout when he called off the wedding. But tension that had built over months of secret meetings and repressed emotions finally broke. His kiss was desperate, hungry. Mine was vengeful, triumphant. What followed was as much about reclaiming what was taken as it was about love. Afterward, lying in the tangled sheets, Nathan traced patterns on my shoulder. Let's not wait, he whispered. Let's not have the big dramatic scene at the rehearsal dinner. Let's just go. Tomorrow morning, early. We'll go to the courthouse, get married, and then face everyone together. The idea was reckless, destructive, guaranteed to cause maximum pain to Stephanie and my parents. Yes, I said without hesitation. In the dark hours of the morning, I justified it to myself. Stephanie had manipulated Nathan when he was vulnerable. She'd never really loved him. He was just another thing to take from me. We were simply correcting a wrong, finding our way back to where we should have been all along. But as dawn broke on what was supposed to be Stephanie's wedding day, Another voice whispered that no matter how I framed it, what we were about to do was unforgivable. I silenced that voice and reached for my phone to text Nathan. Meet you at the courthouse at 9. The morning of June 15th dawned clear and perfect, the kind of pristine summer day that wedding photographers dream about. Sunlight streamed through my hotel room curtains as I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles under my eyes betrayed my sleepless night, but there was something else there too, a determined glint, the look of someone about to jump without checking the depth of the water below. By 7:30 a.m., my phone was buzzing with texts from Stephanie. Morning, sis. Can you believe today's the day? And can you pick up bagels for the bridal party on your way over? Pretty please. I replied with manufactured enthusiasm, promising to arrive with breakfast by 10 a.m. The wedding wasn't until 4 p.m., but Stephanie had scheduled a full day of bridal party preparations, hair, makeup, champagne, photos, none of which I would be attending. At 8:15, I threw a change of clothes and my passport into a small overnight bag. If things went according to plan, Nathan and I would drive to the coast after the courthouse ceremony, hide out for a few days at a remote bed and breakfast while the inevitable storm raged. Then, perhaps, a fresh start somewhere new. Denver, maybe, or Chicago, anywhere far from Portland and the wreckage we were about to create. I kept telling myself this was justice, not revenge. That Nathan and I deserved happiness after Stephanie's manipulation. But as I checked out of the hotel, the concierge's cheerful, "Enjoy the wedding," sent a wave of nausea through me. Nathan was already waiting at the courthouse when I arrived, pacing nervously on the steps. He wore a simple blue suit, not the one he'd planned to wear to marry my sister, and his hair was still damp from the shower. "Hey," he said softly when he saw me. "You look beautiful." I'd chosen a cream-colored sundress, not white. I couldn't bring myself to go that far. With a small bouquet of daisies I'd bought from a street vendor on the way. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, giving him one final chance to back out. He took my hands in his. "I'm sure about you." I always have been. I just got sidetracked. Inside, we filled out paperwork with shaking hands. The clerk barely glanced at us. Just another couple on a busy summer Friday. We were assigned to courtroom 3, where a judge would be available at 9:30 to perform civil ceremonies between other court business. As we sat on a hard wooden bench outside the courtroom, Nathan's phone buzzed repeatedly in his pocket. He silenced it without looking. "Stephanie?" I asked. He nodded. "And your dad?" I turned off location sharing on my phone last night. The reality of what we were doing crashed over me again. They're going to hate us. All of them. Forever. Nathan squeezed my hand. "Maybe.
Probably.
But we'll have each other." At 9:40, the bailiff called our names. We stood before Judge Maureen Keating, a stern-looking woman in her 60s who barely looked up from our paperwork. "Standard civil ceremony?" she asked. We nodded. What followed was a blur of formal language, repeated vows, and trembling voices. When Nathan slid a simple gold band onto my finger, purchased yesterday at a jewelry store across town, I felt a dizzying mix of emotions: triumph, love, guilt, vindication. "By the power vested in me by the state of Oregon, I now pronounce you husband and wife," Judge Keating declared with practiced efficiency. "You may kiss."
Nathans lips met mine briefly, shastely.
Not a kiss of passion, but one of sealing a contract, of crossing a threshold from which there was no return. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Miller," the clerk said, handing us our marriage certificate. "Next case, please." Just like that, it was done. 20 minutes in a fluorescent-lit courtroom, and I had become what Stephanie had spent months preparing to be. In the courthouse lobby, reality began to set in. Both our phones were now lighting up continuously with calls and texts. "We need to separate briefly," Nathan said, running a hand through his hair. "I'll go to the apartment, pack what I need, and call off the wedding. Officially. Face to face." My stomach churned at the thought of Stephanie receiving this news. Are you sure? Maybe we should tell her together.
No.
I owe her this much at least, to end it myself, to take responsibility. You go to your place, pack what you need. I'll meet you at the Harbor Inn in Seaside by 3 o'clock. I nodded, though something felt wrong about splitting up. Be careful. She's going to be devastated. And furious. I know, but it's better this way.
Cleaner.
He kissed me again, more deeply this time. I love you, Amber. We're going to get through this. As I drove to my apartment, memories flashed through my mind. Stephanie crying when I broke her doll at age 6. My parents making me give her my new one as replacement. Stephanie showing up at my high school graduation party in a dress identical to mine, only to receive compliments all night on how much better she looked in it. Stephanie hugging Nathan at the engagement party, making eye contact with me over his shoulder. Had I just made the biggest mistake of my life? Or had I finally, for once, put myself first? By the time I parked outside my apartment building, my phone showed 17 missed calls. My parents, Stephanie, even Nathan's parents. I silenced it and slipped it into my purse. Whatever chaos was unfolding, I couldn't bear to hear it yet. My key turned in the lock, and I pushed open the door, mind already cataloging what I would need to pack for our coastal hideaway. That's when I saw her. Stephanie stood in the middle of my living room, wearing my dream wedding dress. Her hair was half done, makeup streaked with tears, eyes wild with a mixture of heartbreak and rage. "Hello, sister," she said, voice eerily calm. "Congratulations on your wedding day." The marriage certificate burned in my purse like a live coal. In that frozen moment, staring at my sister in my wedding dress on the day I'd stolen her fiancé, I realized we had passed the point of no return. Time seemed suspended as Stephanie and I faced each other across my living room. The wedding dress, my dream dress on her body, caught the mid-morning light, thousands of tiny beads shimmering with her ragged breathing. "How did you get in?" I finally managed, mind racing to make sense of her presence. "I've had your spare key since you moved in," she replied, twisting a loose strand of hair around her finger in that nervous habit I recognized from childhood. "You never asked for it back." Of course. Another boundary casually crossed, another piece of my life Stephanie felt entitled to access. "How long have you been sleeping with my fiancé?" she asked, the calm in her voice belied by the slight tremor in her hands. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Any response felt inadequate, any explanation hollow. "I found this in your purse last night," she continued, pulling a folded paper from the dress pocket. "The marriage license. You left it in the hotel room when you went to get ice. I came by to surprise you with champagne, to thank you for being my maid of honor despite everything." The irony was almost too much to bear. "Stephanie, don't." She held up a hand. "I've spent the last 12 hours trying to understand how my sister could do this to me. On my wedding day. With the man I love. The man you stole from me first." I shot back, defensiveness rising to protect me from crushing guilt. "Is that how you justify this?" She gestured to the license. "An eye for an eye? You pursued him deliberately," I said, the words tumbling out now. "You saw him with me, saw how happy we were, and you couldn't stand it. Just like everything else in my life you've taken." Stephanie's face contorted. "Taken? Are you serious right now? My entire life has been spent living in your shadow. Perfect Amber with her perfect grades and perfect career and perfect independence. Do you have any idea what it's like being compared to you at every turn? Compared to me?" I nearly choked on my disbelief. "Mom and Dad have worshipped the ground you walk on since the day you were born. Nothing I did was ever good enough, ever noticed enough. It was always Stephanie needs, Stephanie wants. Why can't you be more like your sister?" "That's not true," she whispered, but uncertainty flickered across her face. "It is true. The dance lessons, the pageants, the constant attention. You were the golden child, and I was just there. Reliable Amber who doesn't need validation. You think I didn't notice how they bragged about your success? Your fancy job? Your self-sufficiency? They're proud of you in ways they've never been of me. I laughed bitterly. Is that why you went after Nathan? Some twisted way to finally have something they'd value you for. The color drained from Stephanie's face. What are you talking about? Did you ever even love him? Or was he just another thing to take from me? Of course I love him, she snapped, but her eyes slid away from mine. Look me in the eye and tell me you didn't pursue him because he was mine. She couldn't do it. After a long moment, she sank onto my couch, the voluminous dress pooling around her like spilled cream. I wanted him to notice me, she admitted quietly. At first, it was just, I wanted to know what it felt like to be you. To have someone look at me the way he looked at you. But then it became real, Amber. I do love him. Not enough to let him go when you saw he was having doubts. Not enough to consider he might still have feelings for me. So this is my fault. Her voice rose again. You married my fiancé on my wedding day, and somehow I'm the villain? She stood suddenly, grabbing the delicate beaded bodice of the dress and ripping downward. The sound of tearing fabric filled the apartment as crystals scattered across my hardwood floor. Stephanie, stop. I lunged forward, but she was already tearing at the sleeves, the skirt, destroying the dress in a frenzy. If you get him, you don't get this too, she sobbed, ripping at the waistline. You don't get everything. I grabbed her wrists, and she fought against me, years of sisterly wrestling matches giving way to genuine struggle. We stumbled against the coffee table, sending a vase crashing to the floor. Water seeped into the torn dress as we fell onto the couch, both breathing hard. I hate you, she whispered, but the fight had gone out of her. I've always loved you, but right now I hate you. The apartment door burst open before I could respond. Our parents stood in the doorway, faces ashen with shock. What in God's name is happening here? My father demanded, taking in the scene. Stephanie in the torn wedding dress, me still in my courthouse outfit, the obvious signs of a physical altercation. Ask your daughter, Stephanie spat, struggling to her feet. Ask her about her morning at the courthouse. My mother moved to Stephanie immediately, arms encircling her, murmuring soothing words. My father's gaze remained fixed on me, confusion giving way to dawning comprehension, then to something I'd never seen directed at me before, pure disgust. Tell me you didn't, he said, voice dangerously quiet. I stood straighter, summoning what dignity I could. Nathan and I got married this morning. My mother's gasp was audible. You selfish, spiteful girl, she hissed. How could you do this to your sister? The same way she did it to me a year ago, I replied, a strange calm settling over me now that the worst was revealed. By putting herself first, regardless of who got hurt. This is nothing like. My father began, but was interrupted by another figure appearing in the doorway. Nathan stood frozen on the threshold, taking in the tableau before him. His eyes widened at the sight of Stephanie in the destroyed dress, my parents flanking her protectively, and me standing alone on the other side of the room. I've been trying to call you, he said to me, voice strained. I couldn't go through with telling her alone. I came to find you, so we could do it together. Too late, Stephanie laughed hollowly. I found your marriage license last night. Congratulations, husband. Hope you enjoy your honeymoon in hell. Nathan stepped into the apartment, moving toward me, but my father blocked his path. You stay away from both my daughters, he growled. I welcomed you into our family, treated you like a son. Sir, I'm sorry it happened this way, but Amber and I, save it. My father cut him off. You two deserve each other. We need to call everyone, my mother was saying, phone already in hand. The venue, the caterer, the guests. Oh God, what will we tell people? Tell them the truth, I said quietly. Tell them your daughters have been in a toxic competition their entire lives because you created it. Tell them Stephanie stole Nathan from me first, and I stole him back. Tell them this family has been broken for years, and today is just when we finally admitted it. My mother recoiled as if I'd slapped her. How dare you blame us for your selfish actions? Amber, Nathan said, finally pushing past my father to reach my side. We should go. Yes, you should, Stephanie agreed, suddenly composed despite her tear-streaked makeup and destroyed dress. Run away together. It's what cowards do. The wedding is off, my father announced, already on his phone. I'll start making calls. I'll help Stephanie change, my mother added, leading my sister toward the bathroom. We'll salvage what we can of today. In the sudden quiet, Nathan took my hand. I've got a hotel room downtown. We can regroup, figure out next steps. I nodded numbly, grabbing my still-packed overnight bag. As we headed for the door, Stephanie emerged from the bathroom, now in borrowed clothes from my closet, the ruined dress draped over her arm. I hope it was worth it, she said, eyes fixed on mine. I hope you finally got what you wanted. Looking at her devastated face, at my parents' contempt, at Nathan's conflicted expression, I wasn't sure anymore what I had wanted or what I had won. Victory had never tasted so bitter. We drove to the hotel in silence, checking in under our new married name with robotic efficiency. In the anonymous safety of room 512, Nathan sat heavily on the bed. He trailed off, unable to find words adequate to describe the scene we'd fled. Catastrophic, I supplied. Exactly what we should have expected. I didn't think she'd find out before I could tell her. Does it matter? I asked, sudden exhaustion overtaking me. The result would have been the same. They hate us now. All of them. Nathan rubbed his face with both hands. What have we done, Amber? The question hung between us, unanswerable in its simplicity and its complexity. We had followed our hearts. We had corrected a wrong. We had inflicted terrible pain. We had burned bridges that might never be rebuilt. I don't know, I whispered, sinking down beside him. I really don't know. Outside our window, life continued. Traffic moved, pedestrians shopped, clouds drifted across the summer sky. But in room 512, time seemed suspended as we sat side by side, technically newlyweds, practically strangers, united by love and selfishness in equal measure, wondering if what we had fought so hard to claim was worth the price we would all pay for it. 6 months passed like a strange dream. Nathan and I relocated to Denver, far enough from Portland to avoid accidental encounters, close enough that permanent estrangement from our families wasn't inevitable. We rented a small apartment in a modern building downtown, found jobs in our respective fields, and tried to build a life from the ashes of the one we'd burned down. On paper, we were living a newlywed fairy tale. In reality, our marriage was haunted by the circumstances of its beginning. Nathan struggled with guilt more visibly than I did. He would fall into brooding silences, staring at his phone where unanswered texts from former friends accumulated. His parents, initially shocked and angry, had begun tentative communication, but the conversations were strained, superficial. They asked about the weather, my job, whether I'm eating enough, he told me one evening as we picked at takeout Chinese food. Never about us. Never about you. It's like they're talking to a version of me that isn't married. My own parents maintained complete silence for the first 3 months. No calls, no texts, no emails. It was Stephanie who broke the ice, surprisingly. A brief text on my birthday. Despite everything, hope today doesn't suck completely. 3 words that somehow bridged the chasm enough for my father to call a week later. Your mother's not ready to talk, he said after an awkward greeting. But I wanted to check that you're okay. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something, acknowledgement that I still existed in their world. Dr. Bennett, my therapist from before, agreed to continue our sessions via video calls. In the safety of her virtual office, I excavated the deeper truths beneath our family tragedy. I've been thinking about what you said, I told her during our 4th Denver session, about patterns and how we perpetuate them. What conclusions have you reached? She asked. That Stephanie and I were both right in a way. She felt overshadowed by my achievements, my independence. I felt overlooked in favor of her needs, her emotions. We were both responding to the same dynamic, just from opposite sides. And your parents? I sighed. They probably thought they were giving each of us what we needed. Maybe I did seem more self-sufficient. Maybe Stephanie did need more active support. But they never saw how their approach affected us both, how it created this competition. Have you shared these insights with them? No, I admitted. We're barely at hello, how's the weather stage. And with Nathan? Have you discussed how these patterns might be affecting your marriage? The question hit uncomfortably close to home. Nathan and I lived together, slept together, built a functional partnership, but something essential had been damaged. The passion that had driven us to such a destructive choice had cooled, leaving us with the quiet companionship of fellow survivors rather than the deep connection we'd once shared. We're working on it, I said finally. In our 5th month in Denver, I received an unexpected email from my mother. The subject line read simply, Stephanie. My sister had started therapy herself, my mother explained. She was addressing her competitive behavior, her tendency to define herself in relation to me. She had moved to Seattle, my former city, and was working for a media company, building her own path. She's asked about you twice now, my mother wrote. I think, in time, she might be open to communication. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something. I read the email to Nathan that night. That's good, right? He asked cautiously. A start? Maybe, I agreed. But it made me realize something. We've been so focused on surviving, on managing the external fallout, that we haven't really dealt with us. With what happened and why. He set down his glass of wine. What do you mean? I mean that we did something terrible for complicated reasons. And if we don't understand those reasons, really understand them, we're going to carry this weight forever. That conversation led to joint counseling, where we unpacked the tangled motivations behind our actions. Nathan admitted that part of his attraction to Stephanie had been her availability, her uncomplicated adoration during a period when my career had demanded so much of my attention. I confessed that reclaiming him had been, at least partially, about winning rather than love. Painful truths, but necessary ones. 7 months after the wedding that wasn't, I received a text from Stephanie asking if we could talk. We arranged a video call for the following Sunday, both of us visibly nervous as our faces appeared on screen. You cut your hair, she noted. I had chopped my long brown locks into a short bob. Needed a change, I replied. You look good. She did. There was a centeredness to her I hadn't seen before, a quiet confidence. I'm seeing someone, she said after we'd exhausted small talk about weather and work. A therapist, I mean.
Doktor kim o?
She's helping me understand some things about myself. About us. I'm in therapy too, I offered. Both individually and with Nathan. Stephanie nodded, looking down briefly. How is he? He's okay. Working through a lot. We both are. I didn't love him the way you did, she said suddenly, looking up to meet my eyes through the screen. I think I loved the idea of him, of having something you wanted, of being chosen over you, for once. The admission hung between us, remarkable in its honesty. I'm not saying what you two did was okay, she continued. It was cruel and selfish, and it hurt me deeply. But I wasn't innocent either. I pursued him knowing how you felt. I ignored his doubts because I wanted the wedding, the validation. We were both wrong, I acknowledged. In different ways, but both wrong. Dr. Kim says we've been competing for the same limited resources of attention and approval our whole lives. That we never learned how to want things for ourselves, only in relation to each other. It was the same conclusion I'd reached with Dr. Bennett. Hearing it from Stephanie made it more real somehow, more actionable. I'm trying to figure out who I am without defining myself against you, she continued. It's harder than I expected. I know exactly what you mean. We talked for nearly 2 hours, not solving anything, not offering forgiveness, but laying groundwork. Acknowledging the broken patterns. Committing, tentatively, to building something healthier. A month after that call, Nathan and I decided to hold a small recommitment ceremony. Not to replace our courthouse wedding, but to consciously choose each other for the right reasons. Are you going to invite your family? Our new minister, Reverend Jimenez, asked during planning. Nathan and I exchanged glances. Yes, we decided. They may not come, but they should be invited. To our surprise, Nathan's parents agreed immediately. My father accepted cautiously. My mother declined but sent a small gift, a silver picture frame with a note. For a new memory, make better ones. Stephanie's response came last. I'm not ready to watch you exchange vows. But I'm trying to be happy that you're both finding peace. Maybe next year, we can try family Thanksgiving. Small steps. Our ceremony was nothing like the elaborate wedding Stephanie had planned. Just 12 people in a small chapel, vows we had written ourselves, a simple dinner afterward. Nathan's college friend Tyler served as best man. My new coworker Mia stood beside me as maid of honor. No grand entrance, no fancy dress, no lavish reception. Yet as we spoke our vows, honest words about forgiveness, growth, and choosing each other deliberately, I felt something healing that had been broken long before our courthouse wedding. Not just between Nathan and me, but within myself. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived from Stephanie. Inside was a check returning half the cost of the canceled wedding that our parents had absorbed, and a brief note. I'm working on forgiving both of you, and myself too. It's a process. I've met someone new, a graphic designer named Paul who knows nothing about either of you, and likes me for reasons that have nothing to do with our family drama. I'm learning what healthy love looks like. I hope you are too. Take care of each other. I read the note to Nathan that evening as we sat on our small balcony, watching the Denver sunset paint the sky in colors too beautiful to capture in words. Do you think we'll ever fully recover from this? He asked, his hand finding mine. All of us. I considered the question carefully, thinking of the slow, halting steps toward healing our various relationships. The therapy sessions that uncovered painful truths. The difficult conversations that left us raw, but stronger. I think we'll find a new normal, I said finally. Not what we had before, but something honest. Something real. He nodded, understanding. I love you, Amber. Not because of Stephanie, not in spite of her. Just you for who you are. I love you too, I replied, and meant it in a way I hadn't fully before, clear-eyed, without the desperate edge of competition or reclamation. The path to this moment had been extraordinarily destructive. We had hurt people we loved, made choices that couldn't be undone. But standing in the wreckage, we had finally begun to build something authentic from the ruins of our mistakes. As I look back now, I understand that happiness stolen is never true happiness. The dress that wasn't mine, the fiancé I reclaimed through deception, these weren't victories, but symptoms of deeper wounds. Real joy comes not from taking what belongs to others, but from discovering what genuinely belongs to you. If you're watching this and struggling with family patterns that seem impossible to break, know that healing is possible, even after the most devastating betrayals. It takes courage to face your role in toxic dynamics, to acknowledge hard truths about yourself and those you love. But that courage is the first step toward freedom. Have you ever had to rebuild a relationship you thought was beyond repair? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that even our worst mistakes don't have to define us forever. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, true love is never about winning, only about growing together through both beauty and pain.